everyone. Do you hear me okay? I can also hear myself, so that's good. Yeah, so if you have any objections about Bandersnatch, just come and talk to me, and I'm going to convince you that you're wrong. So, yeah. My topic today, surprisingly, is NativeScript Angular and how to migrate your web apps to mobile apps. And I've been giving this talk quite a few times now, maybe 5 or 6 times. So this time I decided to change it. We'll see how. This is my name. I'm not going to pronounce it. It's hard. You can call me Mira or something like that. Anyway, the girl with the purple hair, doesn't matter. I'm a developer at Progress Software, and I've been there for almost 2 years, actually a bit more than 2 years. I've been working on a project called NativeScript, and my main job is integrating NativeScript with Angular. Another fun fact about me is that this is my first job, and although I'm going around speaking to people, meeting new people, I still don't believe that I'm a good developer, and I believe that everyone just keeps learning throughout his whole life. So, obviously. All right, that NativeScript thing, how it works. First of all, it's a framework for building mobile applications with web technologies, like Angular, Vue, or plain JavaScript. So we have 2 sides of this definition. We have the native mobile that we can access through JavaScript. And because it's native mobile, we have really fast, performant user interface because we take advantage of what is already there, what is built really well for Android and iOS. And the second thing is that we have access to all the cool new SDKs and plugins and libraries that come out for the mobile operating systems. And for me, this means that we have augmented reality, which is really cool, and we can build things like that. And again, the second side of the definition is that we write these applications using JavaScript. So if we are already familiar with JavaScript or some framework out there, we can start writing mobile apps. And we also take benefit of all the cool things that the JavaScript libraries give to us, like Webpack supports a feature called hot module replacement, which allows us to iterate really quickly while developing our apps. We don't have to restart the whole application. We just make changes and see them instantly. And of course, there's a whole bunch of frameworks and libraries out there that we can use. But more on that later, because this is one of the things that I changed. I decided to give you a brief overview of how NativeScript works. Not why it's cool, but how it actually works. So we have this thing, the NativeScript runtimes, or as we call them, bridges. And they're the thing that give us access to the native APIs. So we have Android, phone, and it's a box. And we have a normal Android application, also a box. But it's actually just a process, doesn't matter. And we have another box inside that box. And here we have V8, which executes JavaScript code. And that's the whole thing about NativeScript. So we have V8 executing the JavaScript code. And the second important thing is, again, we have access to native APIs. Yeah, for iOS, it's pretty much the same, but instead of V8, we're using another JavaScript engine, JavaScript core. So 4 easy steps to bring you the native API access. Let's see that expression. We have some Java constant that comes from Android, and we're assigning that to a JavaScript variable. And that is a totally valid NativeScript code. So where does the Java thing comes from? First of all, we have the virtual machine, again, that just executes the JavaScript code that we write. But how does it have access to the mobile operating system? Well, we have that term called metadata that exposes the public API of the underlying operating system and SDKs. So let's imagine that we have, for example, the Android SDK or the ARKit for iOS. During build, we get all the methods, all the information from that SDK, and we write down the signature of the methods, like what is the name of the method, how many arguments does it have, what is its return type. We write all that, that's called a signature, inside some metadata. We pack the metadata inside the application, and then we use it to access the actual API, to make the actual call. So through the virtual machine, we make a call. The so-called call dispatcher asks the metadata, does that Android content context thing have a camera service? And because we have all the information about the SDK inside the metadata, it says that, yeah, we have it. So then we can make the call. We make it through the virtual machine. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but yeah, there is a way to call Java stuff from Android through JavaScript. Not exactly through JavaScript, but you get the idea. The mobile operating system returns the type, actually returns the value, and we should notice the type here. It's a Java string. And obviously, we can't just assign a Java string to a JavaScript variable. There are two different worlds. And here comes the third step. It's called marshalling, or just converting types. We call the marshalling service with the Java string, and we get a JavaScript string. And then we are ready to assign that to our JavaScript variable. That's the whole idea. And that is what happens once again. Cool. So what happens if you have objects instead of just primitive types like strings or numbers? Obviously, it will be quite slow to convert the whole object, right? That's why we have something called a proxy. So if we have a Java object, we create a JavaScript object with the same methods, which basically the method calls the original method, right? We don't serialize the whole object, but create a proxy for it. And that's how the NativeScript API access works. All right, now back on Angular, which is the thing that we're going to talk about for 2 days, right? So for me, the whole thing started with AngularJS. And as you can see, AngularJS was quite popular in 2015, 2016. And for me, it was the first JavaScript framework, or the first JavaScript thing ever that I tried. Because before I was writing PHP, it was hard for me to admit it, sorry. But yeah, I really loved AngularJS. And back then, I was still at school. I was going to these competitions where you create some project, you hack some web app, and go and present it in front of people. And you mumble. And this is how it looked like. I was going with my friend from school. And just to make sure this is me. But there was one problem with AngularJS. It was that it was really tightly coupled with the DOM. So you couldn't really extend it with NativeScript. But then there came JS Angular, or just Angular, or Angular 2, or doesn't matter. Let's call it Angular. And Angular was platform agnostic. I repeat, platform agnostic. It wasn't tied to the DOM. And that was pretty cool because it allowed us to extend Angular. It works for the browser, for the server, inside web workers, which is really cool. And of course, we were able to create an integration with NativeScript. Basically, we use the JavaScript framework to manage our application. And internally, we create a mobile user interface or mobile views or whatever. And this is how NativeScript Angular was born. And you may have seen that thing there, that logo. It used to be red, but I think that if you mix blue and red, it's purple, right? So I'm just going to use that from now on. It's just purple. Cool. Enough theory. Let's play a game. Cool. And I forgot to mention that, yeah, we're sponsors, Progress. And this time we decided not to give away swag, but if you go to our booth and fill out the survey, we're going to make a $5 donation to a local food bank. And also, that game here that we're going to play, it will require you to be active. And for every answered question, we're going to donate $5 more. So here we go. It's called Guess the Movie. And I've chosen really hard movies this time. But it's for a good cause, right? So, anyone? Hidden Figures. Cool, cool. Let's see. Really good movie, by the way. This one is, I'm not sure it's popular here. It was pretty popular in Europe. This is Keira Knightley. She's awesome. Anyone? No, it's not. Cool. Yeah, that's Colette. No one can hear you. OK. So for everyone listening to this talk, like on the stream or watching it later, everyone knew who that movie, what that movie was, right? Awesome. Really good one. And it really brought out the psychopaths inside of us, didn't it? It's amazing. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I actually love that movie, and it turns out that it was filmed here in Atlanta, so I was really excited to include it. Yeah. Cool. And last one. This is one. Cool. Does anyone else know it? Awesome, awesome. Cool, so that was the game, and we earned like $50, so that's cool. Good for you. Nice. OK, but the whole idea of this presentation is to convert the web app that we saw to a mobile app. We don't really know what is inside the web app, and one way to find out is go and look at the code and just browse through it and so on, but that is not fun, so I decided to show you a cool tool that you may know or may not know. It's called ng-rev, and it's created by ng-rev, and it's really cool. Let's see how it works. I know that it works for Windows and Mac OS, I've heard, but I'm just going to use it with Linux. And this is how you spawn things with Linux. So basically, you have that. You need to select the project. And usually, I select the tsconfig app.json, which is inside the source folder, because that is the tsconfig for the web app, right? It takes some time to traverse the whole thing, and what we get is a basic structure of the app. I don't think I can zoom that, but you can see that we have just a single engine module. It's called app module, which imports the app routing module and has declared two other components, the app component and the game component. All right, what's inside the app component? It should be the main one, right? We can see the template, and we see that it has a router outlet. That's cool, and we can also go back, and it works. And I'm just going to guess that the main thing inside the app is actually the game component. And it depends on the movie service, which is where we probably get the movies from. And all the guesses that I told you are true because I know the app, but yeah, I just wanted to show you the ng-rev thing. And you can find it later. This thing right here is actually a link, so when you get the slides, you can go and use it. It's very, very helpful for much bigger projects because you can see what's going on inside them. Cool. So as I said, we're going to convert that to a mobile app, but we're also going to keep the web app. So we're going to actually have two apps. How do we do that? There are two ways, two main ways. The first one is to have two apps and three projects. One common project, and one mobile project, and one web project. And the best way to do that is by using xplat. It's an extension built on top of NX, and it actually supports quite a few platforms, not just NativeScript and Angular for web, but also supports Ionic. And it's really cool for managing large projects. The other way is to have just a single project. And because our app is really, really simple, I'm going to use this approach, but I encourage you to check out xplat if you're having much bigger projects. Now, what can be shared and what cannot be shared between our apps? The common thing is that if you have a platform-agnostic service, something that doesn't depend on the DOM or doesn't access the camera on the phone, you can just use it in both projects. You can share routing configurations, although it may not always be the good idea because you may want a really simple mobile app and a much more complex web app. But you can share them because they're, again, platform independent. And finally, you can share the classes of your components. Not the templates, but the class declarations. OK, what is different? Obviously, platform-specific services or ng modules or plugins or whatever uses the DOM or, for example, the AR kit obviously doesn't work on web, so you can't use that. Also, the user interface for NativeScript is quite different from the user interface for the browser. So you have to write custom UI. And for another game, the same rules. I mean, you answer correctly, you make a donation, you don't answer correctly, you make a donation from your own pocket. Cool. So this game is called Can We Share This Thing Between a Web App and a Mobile App? So we have an app module. It imports browser module. It declares an app component. And pretty much that's it. So can we share it with our mobile app? Louder, louder. Come on. No. OK. Correct answer. Obviously, because we have a browser module. It sounds a bit browsery. And in NativeScript, instead, we have the NativeScript module. So you have to have two separate app modules, one for the browser, one for NativeScript. Another one, can we share this component? It's called hint component. It has some selectors, some template, some styles. They're in URLs. And it has a single input. So can we share it? It's a tricky one. Sound bold enough? Who has $5? Yes. OK, so I mean, yeah, it's yes, but why? I mean, does someone can give me an argument why we can share it or we can't share it? OK. What about the template URL?
Devices have browsers. They're just files.
OK. What is inside this? So the person out there said they're just files. What's inside the file? Mm-hmm. OK, as I said, it's a tricky question. Cool. So if we have just a single hint component HTML and it has some HTML inside it, it won't work in NativeScript because we are not using the browser to render components. So you need to have another template URL. But the question is still yes, which is confusing, isn't it? We're going to find out why it works. Again, something like that. Can we share that HTML? No, right. So how does it work in the previous case? So we need to have an alternative user interface for NativeScript. And here's the whole deal. It's all in the file extensions. And it sounds a bit hacky, but it works, so it's fine. So if we go back here and look at the hint component HTML, if you have another file next to the hint component HTML with the name hint component TNS HTML, TNS stands for NativeScript, and something else, we can actually, during the build, if we build for the mobile app, the build is going to pick up the TNS file. That's why it will work. All right? This is tricky, right? So once again, we need to have TNS HTML file and an HTML file. And we can actually do that for all our files in the app. So if you have main TS file, which kickoffs the web app, we need to have main TNS TS file for NativeScript. And inside the main TS file, if we import app module, if we build for web, it's going to pick up the first one. And if we build for NativeScript, it's going to pick up the second one. And it's the same with HTML, TypeScript files, CSS files, or whatever. And to convert to NativeScript, we should actually get our web project, add all the TNS files, and just start it for NativeScript. And how do we do that? Like, one way is to create a TNS file for our web file. But we can also use some magic. And by magic, I mean the Angular CLI. Because the Angular CLI has a feature called ng-add. And if we execute ng-add NativeScript schematics, this is going to convert a large part of our web app to a mobile app. It's going to add a whole bunch of NativeScript files. Then we just need to install NativeScript globally. We can run that command. TNS comes from the NativeScript CLI. And we can start the mobile app. And what we will see is that the mobile app looks nothing like the web app, because ng-add, NativeScript schematics, actually has one mobile app which looks the same for every web project. So we need to convert the user interface. And we can do that with another ng-CLI command called migrate component. And we need to specify the name of the component and then write the user interface inside it. And so I'm not going to do that now because the NativeScript user interface is not something that we can learn in 1 minute. So you can check it out. And there are pretty good resources to see what is different from the HTML and what you should write. So these are the 4 steps to convert the app that we saw. And now I'm going to show you the actual app. It looks like that. It's nothing fancy. It's actually quite ugly user interface because we haven't done any styling. We haven't done anything to make it beautiful, but it's just 4 commands, right? Yeah, that was the demo that we saw. It worked. And that's it from me. Thank you. If someone's brave enough to scan that, it's not the slides, it's something else, but too late.
All right.
Thank you.
You're all done your talk. How are you feeling?
Great.
Good?
Relaxed.
Relax now. You have the whole rest of the day. You're the first speaker of the conference.
I have 2 days, actually.
Yes, exactly.
The whole conference.
Right on. So, Bandersnatch fan, let's talk. Like, obviously, Jem, he's going to come down here soon, but Jem and I are both from Netflix, so we are very close to Bandersnatch, and we actually were part of testing that before it went out. What's your favorite thing about Bandersnatch?
Wait, just testing it, like playing out all those
Oh
scenarios?
yes, playing out some of those scenarios.
Is there a hack to just move forward faster, because it's just 10 seconds and that pisses me off? I mean, after the 3rd time, it kind of gets...
It gets annoying?
Annoying.
All right, that's good feedback for us to maybe take back and say, hey, we need to make this faster.
So how many times did you play it to test it out?
I played it on different devices. I played it like on the phones, tablets, on the TVs, on the browser, just wanting to make sure that we had it right. So a lot of us did that. That's not usually my normal job, but I was excited to be able to test that. So
yeah, man, who wouldn't be?
yeah,
cool.
so it was very good.
Yeah.
So NativeScript, I learned a ton from that talk too, by the way. I haven't done a lot with NativeScript, so it was good to really learn about that. One thing for me is, do you need to know a lot of native mobile development, or you can just, I'm a JavaScript engineer, I can just start writing NativeScript and don't have to worry too much about the native app?
Yeah, the cool thing about NativeScript is that you don't have to know anything about mobile development. You don't even have to set up your own machine now. You can just use JavaScript CLI, and actually there are pretty large number of plugins that are built for NativeScript, which abstract the underlying native APIs. And they're just JavaScript plugins. You can plug them in, call the JavaScript APIs, and see how it happens.
That's
right?
awesome. All magic at that point.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's how the magic works.
Exactly. Well, and even seeing the CLI tool, that was super helpful too, is like just even being able to compile and do that, which you're not having to worry about all those details.
Yeah.
How about debugging though? Like anytime when, I mean, I've had these issues, there's even times at Netflix where we've done like web views where you're loading like in the browser, like just loading JavaScript through a web view, and then you're having to tie back to a native bridge. How about debugging? That's always difficult. Does NativeScript have some good areas to debug? How is that between the native app and JavaScript?
Well, we do support debugging with VS Code and Chrome DevTools.
Yep.
And basically, you can debug the JavaScript code. And because you have direct access, there is no like middle layer where things can break. You can just see what happens to the JavaScript part of the app and figure out what went wrong.
Right on.
But if you need to debug native code for some reason, like the built-in Android SDKs, you can use Android Studio or Xcode for iOS.
Nice. So you have to have both of those running at that point.
Yeah.
That's all right, though. So what's been the biggest limitation that you've found and run into where, because like anytime that we're trying to build something for like not going truly native and just using something like NativeScript, there's always trade-offs. And have you found any limitations or anything between just, instead of going full native and just using NativeScript?
No, it's really good.
I love it. That's a good answer.
I don't know. I mean, maybe for input-output really intense applications, the marshalling can become quite slow, but that's if you're like grabbing a lot of data from the outside world and pushing that through the bridge and then getting it back. It can become laggy, but there was a problem with the NativeScript layouts because how a layout works. It should measure the screen, and then you should figure out where exactly to put everything, right? And that measuring step happens quite a lot of times per second. And that became slow. That's why we wrote the whole thing in pure Java and Objective-C.
Gotcha. And so they actually play very nice, too, is like you can write something in NativeScript, but you can also write it in Java or Objective-C.
But actually, I haven't seen another case besides that internal thing that we did. Like, no one else from the community, I haven't seen someone do that because the app is slow.
Gotcha. So like but at least you have a way out is what I mean, too, which is nice. So that's good. And so at the start of your talk, you'd mentioned PHP developer. I laughed and I've been there as well.
I was young.
Yeah, no, hey, I've done a ton of PHP too. I'm not giving you a hard time. It happens, so. All right, well, thank you so much. We all enjoyed your talk. Give a round of applause for her as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.